In a deeply moving and unexpected live television moment, Denzel Washington was brought to tears after receiving a surprise call from President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. What followed left the studio audience and viewers worldwide speechless. A moment that transcended borders and reminded everyone that influence and leadership can ripple far beyond fame. It began like any other talk show appearance. The crowd erupted in cheers as Denzel walked on stage with his trademark calm smile. The host welcomed him with energy, cracking jokes and showing clips from his recent work. But behind Denzel's polite laughter, there was something distant in his gaze, as if his thoughts were miles away. Midway through the show, the host teased a special surprise. Denzel looked puzzled. The screen behind him lit up, displaying the flag of Burkina Faso. Curious murmurs swept through the audience. Then came a voice, measured, respectful, and rich with emotion. "Good evening, Mr. Washington. This is Ibrahim Traoré, President of the Transition of Burkina Faso." Denzel's entire body seemed to freeze. The crowd went silent. You could hear the breath catch in his throat. No one anticipated what was about to be said. "I know you don't know me," Traoré began, his English touched by a French accent. "But when I was 14, just a barefoot boy in Burkina Faso, I saw you in glory. I saw a man, proud and strong, demanding justice not with fear, but with heart." Denzel blinked, trying to hold back tears. That night, the president continued. "I told my mother, one day I'll stand up for people, too. Just like him." The host looked stunned. Denzel covered his mouth, speechless. Ibrahim went on. "Years later, when my country needed someone to stand, I remembered your courage. I stood not because I was brave, but because I had seen what courage looked like in you." Denzel lowered his hand, his eyes shimmering. "You're saying I helped shape a president?" "No, sir," Ibrahim replied gently. "You helped shape a man who refused to kneel before injustice." A tear slipped down Denzel's cheek. "Thank you, brother," he whispered. The audience was completely still. Then Ibrahim spoke again. "Today, I speak not only as president, but as someone who owes you a great debt. In my culture, when someone saves your soul, we do not forget. I want to officially invite you to Burkina Faso to be honored not as an actor, but as an inspiration. And more than that, I want to name a leadership school after you so that future generations can learn to stand tall, just as I learned from watching you." Gasps filled the room. The host could barely speak. Denzel's voice cracked, overwhelmed. "Mr. President, I don't deserve that." "That's why you do," came the reply. The call ended, and Denzel buried his face in his hands, overcome not by sadness, but by the profound realization that his life had reached across oceans and touched hearts he'd never imagined. But that was just the beginning. Within a day, Denzel was preparing to leave for Burkina Faso, not for a role, but for something much deeper. He packed quietly. No entourage, no fanfare. Just a small backpack and a heart full of emotion. As the plane took off, he stared out the window and whispered to himself, "I don't know what's waiting for me, but I know I need to be there." In Ouagadougou, President Traoré stood by a window in the palace, looking toward the runway. An aide asked if the press should be notified. He shook his head. No cameras, no speeches, just truth. When Denzel's plane landed, there were no flashing lights, no media frenzy. A single black SUV waited on the tarmac. Standing beside it in simple clothes was President Traoré himself. Denzel stepped off the plane slowly. Their eyes met, and without a word, they embraced man to man, not actor to politician, not celebrity to dignitary. Just two men brought together by something greater. "I'm honored you came," Traoré said softly. "I didn't come as a star. Denzel replied. "I came as a brother." They drove through dusty streets, past lively markets and laughing children. No one knew who was in the car. Their destination was a humble clay-on-tin house. "This was my home," Traoré said, leading Denzel inside. There were no guards, no gold trim, just aged photographs, a mat on the floor, and a sacred quiet. Something profound was beginning in neither of them, yet knew how much it would change the world. Then Traoré handed Denzel a worn-out photograph. In it, a small boy clutched the hand of an older woman. "She raised me when my parents were working around the clock," he said softly. "She bathed me, fed me, told me stories of courage." After a pause, he added in a whisper, "And she's still alive." They drove for another hour through twisting village paths, mostly in silence. Denzel kept his eyes on the photo. The woman's face radiated warmth, her eyes gentle, her smile kind, the kind of strength only time and hardship could shape. "Where is she now?" he asked quietly. Traoré's jaw clenched. "She's still working, cleaning classrooms in a village school." Denzel looked at him, stunned. "At Basharwu," Traoré nodded solemnly. "She's never asked for help. Says, 'God gave me legs. I'll use them until He takes them.'" When they arrived, the school was humble but alive with energy. Barefoot children scribbled in the dirt with sticks. Then she appeared frail but dignified, sweeping with a broom in hand. It was her, the woman in the photo. Denzel stepped out of the car and froze. Traoré walked toward her. She looked up, eyes wide, then welled with tears. "Ibrahim," she whispered. He ran into her arms. "Mahowa." They embraced tightly. Both crying, Denzel approached slowly. She turned and gasped, her hand trembling as she reached out to touch his face. You're him." In the quiet of that dusty courtyard, time seemed to freeze. 3 lives, 3 stories, 1 unforgettable moment that would touch hearts everywhere. But what followed would move an entire nation. Later, Mama Hawa sat between Denzel and President Traoré under the shade of an ancient baobab tree near the school. Her hands were worn, her back stooped. But her voice was steady as she shared stories of Ibrahim's childhood. How he cried in her arms during my cold nights, how once he gave her the only piece of mango he had so she wouldn't go hungry. Denzel listened intently, his eyes soft with emotion rarely seen. Then she reached into her old apron and pulled out a faded, folded note. "I kept this," she said. "It was a child's handwriting. One day, I'll be a leader. I'll find you, Mama, I promise." Traoré stared at the paper, overwhelmed. "I wrote this when I was 9. On her birthday, after she gave me her only piece of bread." Denzel wiped a tear. She held on to hope. That's the strongest faith there. Suddenly, a young child came running barefoot, laughing, holding a cracked plastic ball. "Mama, will you play?" And she did. Still barefoot, still smiling. And something shifted inside Denzel. He didn't feel like a visitor anymore. He had discovered something sacred. That evening, back at the palace, the air felt different. Neither man spoke much. They were deep in thought. Eventually, Traoré stood. "There's something I want to show you, something no outsider has seen." He led Denzel through a narrow hallway lined with stone, their steps echoing in silence. At the end was a thick wooden door. Behind it was a dimly lit room filled with old maps, journals, and a single framed photo. Mama Hawa and a young boy, both smiling wide. "This is my real treasure room," Traoré said. Denzel was speechless. Traoré picked up a tattered notebook filled with childhood dreams and early ideas for a better Burkina Faso. "It all started with her," he said. "I'm here because she believed in me when I had nothing." Denzel touched the page gently. "You lead like someone who remembers love?" Traoré nodded. Leadership isn't about power, it's about gratitude. The room fell quiet. Two men, deeply shaped by love and resilience, united by the desire to honor a woman who gave so much without ever asking. At dawn, Denzel sat on the palace terrace, watching the sun rise over Ouagadougou. Mama Hawa's voice and smile echoed in his heart. Then Ibrahim joined him. "I had a thought," Denzel said, sipping his tea. "Let's give her the honor she never asked for." Traoré smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." Later. That afternoon, with no press, no crowds, just a small team, they returned to the village school. Children gathered, teachers watched quietly. Mama Hawa looked puzzled. "What's happening?" Then Traoré knelt before her, holding out a velvet box. Inside was a golden medallion engraved with her name and the national seal. "For your service to this nation," he said, voice thick with emotion, "as a mother, a teacher, and a guardian of hope." The children clapped. Denzel stepped forward, his eyes wet. "And from the world of cinema," he said, handing her an envelope, "I spoke with my producer this morning. Your story will become a film, and every penny it earns will go toward building schools in your name." Mama Hawa stood silent for a moment. Then she smiled, not for fame or applause, but for the children still running barefoot in the dust. For the future she never stopped believing in. Hawa collapsed to the ground, overwhelmed with tears. Her entire life had been spent giving to others, never expecting much in return. But now, for the first time, the world was giving something back. Yet the most powerful moment was still ahead. 3 days later, Denzel Washington returned to Los Angeles for a major television interview on one of America's most popular talk shows. The segment was intended to be light talk of red carpets, upcoming films, and humorous stories. But something in Denzel's demeanor had shifted. He smiled, but his eyes carried the weight of something deeper as the interview unfolded. The host brought up his recent trip to Africa. Denzel paused, then surprised everyone by asking, "Can I take a call?" The host laughed, a bit unsure. On live TV, Denzel nodded. The crew hurried, and within moments, a large screen behind him flickered to life. President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso appeared live. The audience went quiet. "Mr. Washington," the president said with warmth, "your visit reminded us that compassion knows no borders." Then he added, "You honored my people. And now, I want to honor someone you inspired." He motioned to someone beside him, and the image changed. Mama Hawa appeared, holding a phone, eyes bright with emotion. The audience gasped. Denzel lip trembled, his hand shook. President Traoré continued, "You reminded the world that those with the loudest voices must sometimes stop to listen." And then, in halting English, Mama Hawa spoke. "Thank you, my son." Denzel lowered his head and began to cry, right there on live television. And around the world, millions cried with him. The clips spread like wildfire. Social media exploded not with movie talk, but with something far more human. From Johannesburg to Tokyo, Paris to Atlanta, people shared stories of the women who had shaped their lives. An old photo of President Traoré embracing Mama Hawa in her kitchen began circulating online, becoming a powerful symbol. News networks around the world interrupted regular programming to replay that raw, emotional moment. CNN called it the most human thing ever broadcast live. Then something even more unexpected happened. A modest fundraising page, quietly started by a former student of Mama Hawa's village school, had aimed to raise $10,000. Within 2 hours, it had passed 1 million. People didn't just watch, they responded. In a fractured world, this story of a woman's quiet strength, a soldier's vow, and an actor's tears brought people together. But while the world was watching, Mama Hawa was fading. She had one final wish by the 6th day of this remarkable week. Her body was tired. She had smiled endlessly, embraced guests, spoken with leaders, but inside, she knew it was time. She requested to meet with Denzel and Ibrahim in private, no cameras, no press, just the three of them in her humble room. "I'm old," she said gently, her voice fragile but firm. "I won't live to see the next harvest." They both pleaded with her to rest, to stay strong, but she smiled softly. "I'm not afraid. I have only one request: that no child in Burkina Faso ever goes to school hungry again." Thank you, President. Traoré silently wept. She reached for Denzel's hand. "You tell stories that make the world listen. Tell this one." Then, from under her pillow, she retrieved a faded scarf worn and delicately repaired. It was the same scarf young Ibrahim had once tied around her arm when playing pretend as president. She placed it in his hands. "My first medal," she whispered. Her final words, "Take care of each other." They held her as her eyes closed. For the last time. Outside, the sun was rising, casting golden light through the village. Her legacy had just begun. Traoré remained beside her, still holding the scarf, breathing in the scent of shea butter and old books. Denzel knelt at her feet, trembling. "She gave me everything when I had nothing," Traoré said quietly. "Now I must give everything back." He turned to Denzel, lifting the scarf as if it were a crown. "We will build something in her name, a school, a garden, a future." Denzel's eyes were swollen with grief. "Yes, yes, we will. I'll help." Outside, the village had gathered. Word had already spread. President Traoré stepped into the crowd and held the scarf high. "Mama has gone to rest," he announced, "but her spirit will nourish generations." The crowd wept together. In less than half a day, the news spread across the globe. Burkina Faso declared a national day of mourning in her honor. At a press conference that evening, President Traoré made a solemn vow: "Every child in this nation will know her name." Denzel quietly canceled every public appearance on his schedule. "I've played kings and generals," he said, but today, he didn't need to finish the sentence. The world already knew. I serve a mother. The morning sun rose softly over Burkina Faso, casting a warm light over a simple wooden casket placed at the heart of the village. There were no grand displays, no velvet ropes, only flowers, drums, and deep, respectful silence. President Ibrahim Traoré walked alone behind the casket, carrying just a scarf. Right behind him, Denzel Washington followed, eyes swollen from lack of sleep, suit still creased. Neither man spoke. They didn't have to. Messages poured in from world leaders, but what moved everyone most came from a little boy in Niger who walked barefoot for 2 days, just to deliver a handwritten note: "Thank you for raising our president." When the casket was lowered, the villagers sang, children cried, elders clutched their hearts. A bird landed gently atop the grave and remained there, motionless. Then something unexpected happened. Denzel stepped forward. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a necklace that had belonged to his father. "She reminds me of him," he whispered. "Strong, quiet, never asked for anything." He placed it on the grave. "Goodbye, Mama." Cameras lowered. Some moments are too sacred for screens. That evening, Denzel and President Traoré sat side by side under the stars, the fire flickering between them. No words were needed. No words were needed. They had just laid to rest the woman who had shaped both their lives, one through her hands, the other through her quiet strength. Finally, Traoré said, "Denzel, this week reminded me who I really am." Denzel nodded. "Me too." In the stillness of the night, they made a pact not formal, not written. It was born from shared sorrow, deep appreciation, and renewed purpose. By morning, the Mama Hawa Foundation was born a promise to provide food, education, and healing for children in remote villages of Burkina Faso and beyond. Denzel pledged his entire upcoming film salary to the cause. But more powerful than the money was the short video he released before flying home. Looking straight into the camera, he said, "If one woman in a quiet village can raise a future president and change the heart of a Hollywood actor, then what are we all waiting for?" Within a day, the video reached 100 million views, and the world paused, waiting to see what would follow. 3 days after the funeral, Denzel returned to the U.S. without any fanfare or media alerts. But his scheduled live interview couldn't be canceled. It had already been promoted nationwide. He agreed, but on one condition: let me speak freely. No script. The show began with laughs and anticipation. But when the host asked, "You've been all over the world. What's one moment that changed your soul?" Denzel didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out the scarf. Quietly into the microphone, he said, "President Traoré called me, and I couldn't breathe. He reminded me that greatness isn't about trophies or red carpets. It's about mothers who clean your wounds and leaders who remember." Them, the host, puzzled, asked, "What exactly did he say?" Denzel's eyes filled with tears. He picked up his phone and played a voice note. It was Traoré's voice. "Thank you for honoring a woman the world forgot, but who made a man the world remembers." In that moment, Denzel couldn't hold back. He broke down in front of millions. The footage exploded online newsrooms. Froze mid-report. People paused meals, and the video of Denzel clutching the scarf and weeping quietly went viral. Comments flooded in. "I've never cried this hard for someone I never met. Calling my mom right now. Who is Ibrahim Traoré? We need more leaders like him." Stories of unsung mothers from all over Africa started surfacing. In the U.S., youth groups held candlelight vigils in Mama Hawa's honor. But in Burkina Faso, something even more remarkable began. Children in remote villages started writing letters, not to celebrities or Santa, but to their president. One note read, "If I work hard like you, will I also make my mother proud?" Denzel remained quiet after the interview, until the next morning, when he posted a single photo on Instagram: a lone tree in the Burkinabe countryside. The caption? Read, "She watered roots that now hold up nations." No tags, no marketing, just truth. 1 week after the call that started it all, a statue was quietly unveiled in Ouagadougou. It wasn't of a king, a president, or a general. It was of a woman holding a child's hand, her neck wrapped in a familiar scarf. The plaque below read, "To Mama Hawa, the mother of all leaders." Traoré stood beside Denzel as they held candles. They said nothing because some endings are too sacred for words. That night, a soft wind moved through the streets. Locals swore they felt Mama Hawa's spirit pass by their cheeks. Back in Hollywood, Denzel made one last gesture. He launched the Hawa Fund, a scholarship program for rural African girls who dream of leading. When the press asked for comment, Denzel simply said, "Some phone calls change your plans. This one changed my soul." If this story moved you, made you cry, reminded you of someone you love, share it. Comment, "I believe in the power of care. I believe in the power of love and leadership." Let's carry this story across oceans, across hearts, because greatness isn't about the spotlight. It's about spirit. And one act of kindness can echo across generations.